Welcome everybody. Welcome to another of our robot mascot events. We've still got some people joining, so I'll just give it a couple of seconds, get the last few people in the room. So yeah, welcome. We've got Mark with us today, who I'll introduce you to in a minute, and we're going to be talking all about how to nail your revenue model. From my perspective, this is one of the areas that I find founders and startups struggle with the most when we're looking at pre-seed and seed pitches. So I'm hoping that Mark is going to be able to share with you some real insights and give you some incredible ideas as to how to start to nail your revenue model and get kind of a pricing structure that's right for your business and is going to help you scale and help you impress investors. Before we jump into the session and I hand you over to Mark, I'll just give you a quick introduction for those of you who don't know who I am and who Robot Mascot are. So I'm James Church. I'm the COO and co-founder at Robot Mascot. I'm also the author of the best-selling book Investable Entrepreneur. And at Robot Mascot, we create investment materials that convince investors. So by investment materials, I mean business plans, financial projections, pitch assets, business valuations, all of the things you need to convince an investor that your business is the one to back. And when we do that, our clients become 30 times more likely to raise investment versus the industry average, the industry benchmark. And because of that, we've been recognized as the UK's leading pitch agency. We're trusted by Crowdcube, Seeders, Dent Global Accelerators, and many more besides. Essentially, we believe that powerful things happen when great innovation meets inspiring communication. It has the power to change the world, inspire movements, build brilliant brands. And we just got fed up with seeing these incredible ideas fail because they couldn't communicate properly with investors. And we wanted to put an end to that. And that's how Robot Mascot started helping founders like you to create the assets they need to convince investors. And like I say, one of those areas that they struggle with the most when we're helping them to refine their business strategy is really nailing that revenue model. How are they going to commercialize their idea in a way that's scalable? And it's one of the biggest problems that we see. So I'm excited to have Mark with us today to help talk through some ideas and give you some thoughts on how to approach that with you. We've still got people joining, so I'm still trying to do two things at once here. I just want to say before we jump in, a massive thank you to those of you who bought a ticket for good for today's session. With that ticket, we fund entrepreneurs, female entrepreneurs in Kenya, to help them build businesses, draw their families and their friends and their communities out of poverty through the power of entrepreneurship. And with the tickets that we've sold today, we've actually been able to fund 98 days of business training and microfinance for women, 280 days of early childhood education for their children, and 14 years of access to life-saving clean water for a family. So that's an incredible impact just by turning up today. So massive thank you to everyone who got a ticket for good. A couple of final things from me. If you are thinking about raising investment at any point in the next 12 months, 6 months, take a look at our Pitch Ready scorecard. You can benchmark yourself against the standard that's required to close a round, and you can see how you're performing versus other founders who are pitching for investment alongside you. And it will give you a 12-page report with hints and tips and strategies on how you can improve your score and become one of the top founders out there pitching for investment. And finally, if you want to get the recording, I'll be sharing it on my LinkedIn profile. You can connect with me, James Church. You can join my Facebook group. I'll be sharing it in there, Investable Entrepreneur, or you can check out the Robot Mascot YouTube channel. And yeah, next week, in 2 weeks' time, I'll be giving a talk on how to become an investable entrepreneur, talking about one of the key themes in my book that was launched last year and became an Amazon bestseller. So if you haven't done already, go get a ticket for that on Eventbrite. But without further ado, I want to introduce you to Mark. This is why we're all here today. We want to hear Mark's wisdom when it comes to your revenue model. Now, Mark, we've worked with Mark for a number of years. I've known him for quite some time now. He is the pricing expert. He's the owner of a company called PriceMaker, And he's the leading expert on pricing, structures, revenue models for startups and SMEs. So you're in really good hands today. I'm excited to see what Mark's going to share with you. And without further ado, I'm going to stop sharing my slides and hand over to Mark.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, James. And thanks. Good afternoon, everybody. It's great to be with you all this afternoon. So just give me 1 second while I share my screen, and then we can get started. So, James, can you just confirm you can see my title slide?
I can see your screen. You're good to go.
Good. Great. Thank you. Great. So, well, look, my goal this afternoon really is to get you thinking about the power pricing and show you some tips, suggestions that you can use in your business to improve your revenue model forecast. You know, the session will be interactive. I'm going to ask questions and invite comments as we go along. And as James said, please feel free to put any questions in the chat box, and we'll review those together at the end, or any comments as we go through. So I'm going to present for about 45 minutes. So that should leave us enough time for a Q&A at the end, and then we'll address any specific questions that you've got for your business. Towards the end as well, I'll also be sharing a link that you can use to get a personalised assessment of your pricing capability for your business. So don't miss out on that. It's free. It doesn't take too long to do, and it gives you some key recommendations on what you might need to do to improve your pricing. Right, let's get going. So, as James said, I'm Mark Peacock. I'm the owner of PriceMaker, and we help growing SMEs create better pricing solutions. And they typically lead to an increase in net profits of at least 30%. I was in corporate life for many years in a variety of roles, and I know from my own experience how important price is to business success. So when I set up this business a few years ago now, I decided to focus on price because nobody else seems to talk about it, particularly in the SME space. So we're trying to spread the word about the power of pricing. I'm here with my colleague Chris Howard today, and show people that there's lots of simple things that you can do that are going to make a big difference to your business and your bottom line. So for us, it's all about confidence. Pricing comes from confidence, and confidence comes from having a well-designed pricing model which we can help you create and which ultimately delivers an improvement in your net profits. We work with a wide variety of businesses in all sectors, and the problems they face tend to be the same. We're creating a new product and we don't know how to price it, or we're worried that we're not charging enough and we think it could be higher, or I need to put my prices up, but I don't know how to do it. Or we're just trying to find ways to grow our margins. So if you're experiencing any of those problems, don't worry. These are all very typical, and hopefully getting a better handle on your pricing model is where you need to start. Okay, so this is where I'm just going to invite you to think about your business situation for a second, and we're just going to start with a quick poll. So I'd like you to answer this question by popping your answer in the chat box and give the answer 1 to 5. So the question is, how would you rate your ability to set prices in your business? And rate that by just answering 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. Is it 1, very low? Is it 2, minor ability? Is it 3, making it up? 4, think I'm okay? And then 5, I'm a rock star. So how do you feel about your pricing? Is it difficult? Is it easy? Is it challenging, etc.? So I see lots of replies coming in. So typically, people would tend to say, "Well, I'm making it up as I go along," or "I think I'm okay. I've just about got this sorted." And I guess the point I would make is, I think we tend to overestimate our ability to be good at pricing, because we're just not aware of some of the other ways to think about pricing. We tend to resort to tried and trusted methods or tactics that people have taught us, so cost plus margin pricing and things like that. But the point is, there are lots of different ways to think about pricing. And if you're struggling, if you answered very low or minor ability, then good, because at least you're being open and honest and you're recognizing a problem. and we can only get better from there, right? Okay, so let's think about somebody who is a bit of an expert in this area. You should all know this chap, Warren Buffett, so the world's most famous and successful investor. So he says the single most important thing he looks for when deciding whether or not to invest in a business is what he calls its pricing power. So what he means by that is that those businesses that can relatively easily increase their prices without losing customers, they've got high pricing power. And the reason they can do that is that they've got great brands, great products, great service, great websites, great marketing, whatever it is. You know, there's a real strength about their business, and they've aligned their pricing power to the strength of the business. And he makes big bets, right? He's investing hundreds of millions in a small number of businesses at any one time. So he's got to be absolutely certain that where he's going to put his money is going to pay back. So if he thinks pricing is the most important thing to think about, then maybe you should as well. But the point I would make is this is open to any business. This is not the exclusive preserve of large corporates, global giants. However big your business is, if you improve your pricing power, you will get better and more profitable as a result. Okay, so let's get down to basics. So this is Business School 101, right? You all know this stuff. There are only 3 key drivers of profit: price, volume, and cost. So price times volume equals your revenue, and you take off your costs and you got your profit. It's as simple as that, right? The question I would invite you to consider here is how much time do you spend thinking about each of those 3 things? How much time do you, as the business owner or the business leader, or you and your management team, how much time do you spend focusing on improving your price, growing your volumes, or reducing your costs? And again, if you want to pop a number in the chat box there, just to give, so take a number and split it across 100%. How would you split 100% across each of those 3 things? When I do this talk a lot, what I find is particularly with smaller businesses, most of the emphasis is on the middle one, growing volumes, right? The majority of our effort is on sales, marketing, acquiring more customers, and selling more products and services. So you might see a profile that looks like this. Yeah, so 70% of our time we're trying to grow our business, grow and sell more product, basically. 20% of the time we might think about reducing our costs, so negotiating with our suppliers, cutting out unnecessary overheads, whatever it is. And then maybe, if we're lucky, 10% on improving our pricing. But what I would say to you is that if you accept that price, volume, and cost are all equally as important to generating bottom line profit, then my view is you should spend roughly the same amount of time working on each, which for most people will mean a significant increase in the amount of time you spend thinking about pricing, because we tend not to spend that much time thinking about pricing and revenue models because it's hard, it's difficult, and it's fraught with danger, right? So we tend to leave it to one side as human nature, and we focus on the things that we think we can easily address, sell more, cut costs. So that's entirely understandable. But have a think about how much more time you could or should be spending on reviewing your pricing strategy to improve your business. So there's plenty of anecdotal evidence in terms of what goes on, typical mistakes and common traps with pricing and revenue, particularly for SMEs and startups. So here's a few. So number 1, so starting out with low prices because you're new, because you're a startup. So you think you've got to start at the bottom end of the market, and then you're going to work your way up gradually, and in time you can earn more money. I think the problem with that, of course, is it's very hard to work your way up. And what I would say to people in that situation is you're far better off starting at a high price and letting yourself come down a bit if you find you've overpitched it. It's far easier to start high and come down a bit than start low and try and work your way up. Number 2, so if you're selling your time, you make the mistake of thinking that the only decision you need to make is your hourly rate, and that is your price. And then everything else is an estimation of the amount of time that we need. So that's not pricing, that's costing, and you're just putting a cost on your time. So it's one of the most common but least effective pricing methods there is. If you've got number 3, an online business, and you've got some free users and they like your product, there's a temptation to say, well, look, we'll get some users on board, we'll get them trying out our product, we find out what they like, and then we'll think about pricing. Or we design a product and then we'll think about price at a later date. And the trouble is you're setting quality expectations and reference points early on before you thought about your price points, and that can be very dangerous. Cost plus margin. So hopefully you all know what cost plus margin is, right? So you know what your unit cost is, you have a guess at what margin you'd like to charge for it, and that's how you calculate the price. And the reason we do that is because it's quite simple to do, but also everybody else does it. So therefore we think that must be the right way to price up product-based offerings. But it has some limitations, and I'll touch on those as we go through. Number 5, thinking that the only way to increase sales is to reduce prices. Sales teams the world over will go to their boss and say, look, boss, you're hammering us for more growth, but we're too expensive. So can you lower the prices, please? And in my past, as a P&L owner, that's the kind of request that you would get. And it's tempting to follow that request because it makes sense, right? Supply and demand, high price, low volume, and all that kind of thing. But there are other ways around it. And equally, the flip side of that is true. Number 6, believing that if our prices are higher, that's going to make them harder to sell and not easier. And actually, again, I'll touch on this later, there are ways that you can achieve higher average prices in a way that's easier to sell than just selling a single cheap price. And then finally, not being clear on who your ideal customer is, right? We all know we need to know who our ideal customer is, but then also being clear on what they're willing to pay. And that is hard. It's not easy to know or to judge willingness to pay, particularly if you've got a diverse customer base. But there are steps you can take to get closer to that. By the way, there's no such thing as a perfect price. No such thing. So don't try and chase it, but you can do an awful lot to get closer to that, to what a customer defines as a perfect price. Okay. Oh, sorry, not working. Right. So there's loads of models, loads of evidence that demonstrate why price is the biggest lever you can pull. I use this one because I like the charts, and it was a study that was done in America, and it simply asked the question: if we improve all of our metrics on the left-hand side of the screen there, so price, revenue, cost of goods sold, overheads, if we improve them by 5%, what happens to EBITDA, our profit number, which is the figure on the right? So you can see at the top there, so in this study, if they improve price by 5%, profit improved, EBITDA improved by 22%. If we grew revenue or volumes by 5%, profit goes up by 12%. If we reduce cost of goods sold by 5%, our profits go up by 10%, and so on, right? It's kind of what you'd expect, but I think the surprising aspect of this is the top one, how powerful this is. Because the thing about price is any improvement in price all falls straight to the bottom line. There's no uplift in cost of goods sold that you've got to count off. There's no change in overheads. It's all, any revenue upside is profit upside. And the other point to bear in mind with this, of course, is it's the fastest thing that you can do to increase your profits. If you're trying to grow your business and you say, well, we need a new marketing campaign or a new website, or we need to recruit some more salespeople, that's going to take 6 to 12 months to pay back, right? But you could change your prices tomorrow and you get the benefit from that price increase straight away. So it's a very powerful tool at your disposal. Price is the only thing in your business that drives top and bottom line growth at the same time. And also it's a key enabler for better cash flow. You know, we often hear that the reason businesses go bust is because they ran out of cash. Well, maybe they ran out of cash because they had a bad pricing model. You know, what's the underlying reason for that? You've got to look behind the surface symptoms. So therefore, it follows that your price level and therefore your profit margin dictates long-term success. Businesses eventually go out of business because they fall out of line with what the market wants and what it's willing to pay for. And they're trying to continually sell the same old thing that they've always been selling. For those of you that are working with James or in a similar vein, looking to raise investment for your business, any investor is going to want to see a clearly thought out revenue model. And if you can show your thinking behind your pricing strategy, they're going to be far more interested. I've worked in many private equity backed organizations, and I have clients who are private equity backed. And private equity houses, pricing strategy is always a key component of their value creation plan, because they know how powerful it is as a lever, and they also know that most businesses tend to shy away from looking at it. So if we can help businesses get past this fear, this hump of fear, what's going to go wrong, and find a way to improve prices in a way that our customers like, it's going to add a lot of value. There's a great rule of thumb from McKinsey. They say a 1% increase in price can yield a 10% increase in your net profits. So let's just look at that quickly. So imagine you've got a business, a small business, £10 million of revenue. Okay, so we're going to put our prices up by 1% across the board. There's no change in volume, and it's all sustainable. There's no pushback from your customers. So your outcome is £10.1 million, right? That's your new revenue position, or 1% increase. So it doesn't sound particularly interesting at that point, but of course that 0.1 million all drops straight to the bottom line because there's no cost attached to it. So if you have a net profit on that business of 1 million, it's now gone up to 1.1 million. In other words, a 10% increase, right? So it's really simple numbers, but I think all too often we forget how powerful the power of a small price increase can have on the profitability of your business. Furthermore, if you're looking for investment, and let's say you're talking about an earnings multiple of 5 times your earnings is the value of the business. So in this case, a £1 million business would be valued at £5 million, for example. If we now then apply that 1% price increase through to your business valuation, so your business valuation was 5 million and it's now gone up to 5.5 million because your net profit has gone up to 1.1. So if you think of it, a 1% price increase yields a 10% increase in your net profit, which in turn generates the equivalent increase in your earnings multiple and your business valuation, in this case, £500,000. Okay, so I've used made up numbers here, but you get the point, right? The more you embed this understanding and this thinking of price improvement in your business, the more value you will get out of it. It's a hard linear equation. Okay. So you're probably sat there thinking, oh, Mark, it's all very well you talking about this stuff, but my customers are like really price sensitive, right? I just can't put my prices up. So I just want you to do a quick thought experiment. You've all heard of the demand curve, right? So when price is high, volume is low. When volume is high, price is low. That's why it's a negative curve like that. But how true is that really? So think of an object you really value. And when I'm doing this talk, I usually indicate my phone here. So this is a Samsung mid-market A30 phone. I think it costs 300 quid. Really good phone. Does absolutely everything that I want. Generally don't have any issues with it. So Samsung came along to me today and said, Mark, we're going to put the price up by 1%. Would you still buy it? Well, of course I would. It's such a good phone. Another 3 quid makes no odds. Okay, well, we're going to put the price up by 2%. Would you still buy it? Okay, £306. Yeah, absolutely. It's still a fantastic phone. Okay, what about if we put the price up to 4%? Would you still buy it? Okay, £312. Yeah, do you know what? An extra 12 quid? Absolutely. It's still an amazing deal. Okay, what if we put the price up to 10%? Would you still buy it? Okay, 330 quid. Well, maybe I know at that price point, I could take a look around and see what other options there are for me, because I know in that market, it's highly competitive, and I might get a better phone at that price. So the point I'm trying to make is, for a target market of 1, me, Samsung could put their prices up by 4%, and demand does not drop. Yeah, demand stays at the same level, because we all have differing levels of our attitude to price and our level of willingness to pay. So my thought experiment that I want you to do right now is to think about, what is the maximum number that you could put your prices up in percentage terms without it damaging or affecting either sales volume growth or customer satisfaction. And if you're happy to, share that number in the chat box. What's the highest number that you believe you could safely introduce today and it would have no impact on your sales levels or your customer satisfaction? I'm just going to stop talking there, and just for 5 seconds, just let people enter their thoughts. Okay, so we're getting a few answers in there. So the point is this, right? Whatever number you've given, you said yourself, yeah, I think we could increase our prices by that number, by 2% tomorrow, and it would make no difference. So my question to you is, well, why don't you? What's stopping you do that? Well, it comes back to fear, of course, and uncertainty, and how to implement it properly. So I'm not suggesting you do that, by the way. What I'm just trying to get you to realize is that there is a degree to which we can improve pricing. And if we take on board the learning from the previous slide, 1% increase in price puts a lot on your bottom line. So have a think about that when you get back to your business after this webinar. The next slide is deliberately busy, but I do it for a specific reason. Okay, so here it is. It's called 50 Pricing Strategies and Tactics. So the point of this slide, I'm not going to read all these out, but what I want you to take from this slide is that there are loads of different ways to think about pricing. Loads. Here's 50 that I'm aware of. There's probably more, but there's enough to be going on with, right? The problem is most businesses only use 3 or 4 pricing strategies or models at most. And they tend to all be in the top left-hand corner on this slide. So what I call in the classical pricing section. So cost plus margin, competitor-based pricing, time and materials. You might as well have heard of, price skimming, prestige pricing. So those are the ones that most businesses use. And all of you on this call will be using at least one of those strategies. The next column is promotional pricing. So pricing to attract new business. So special offers, volume discounts, free offers, price matching, etc. So again, I'm sure many of you have tried or are using some of these to help grow your business. The middle column is about monetization pricing strategies. So this tends to be more linked to your business model. So subscription pricing is flavor of the month at the moment. It's very popular with online businesses, and that's directly linked to their business model. But there's other things like pay-as-you-go, a freemium, pricing to budget, and so on. However, it's the 2 columns on the right that are the less well-known, but actually can offer a high degree of value to you as a business owner, but also to your customers. And I'm going to talk about a couple of the examples in the psychological pricing section, because I want to get across to you some of these ideas. Actually, they're quite simple. They're not difficult to understand, but they can be very powerful. And there's nothing on this page, by the way, that you can understand. It might not be applicable to your business, but there's nothing that you can understand. And again, that's what I want to get past, this idea that pricing is difficult, and it's only for rocket scientists and people with PhDs in mathematics. Pricing is just the interface between buying and selling, right? At the end of the day, between buyer and seller. So it's making sure we set our price at the right level accordingly. Okay. So here's a great story. It's from a book called Predictably Irrational by Dan Ariely, and he is a professor of behavioral studies. at MIT in the United States. And he did this lovely experiment where he gave his students some aspirins. So he said to one half of the students, the aspirin costs 10 cents. And he said to the other half, he said, it costs $2. Okay, now go away and use the aspirin and come back and tell me how effective it was at reducing pain. So when they came back, the student who'd had the 10-cent aspirin, 60% said, yeah, it cured my headache. And the students who'd had the $2 aspirin, 85% said, yeah, it cured my headache. But what neither group knew was that in both instances, the aspirin was a placebo. What does that tell you? Well, it tells you firstly that placebos cure headaches, but more importantly, for this context, the only difference was the price they were told, not what the price actually was, not what the product quality actually was. The only difference was the price they were told. So the students who had the $2 aspirin thought, wow, this must be a good product, right? So my perception of the product is high, and their actual experience of the product was high. 85% said it cured their headache because it was a $2 aspirin. Whereas on the other side, the students that had the 10 cents aspirin, either really cheap one, far fewer had that same perception. So the moral of the story here is when it comes to your pricing, you need to do everything that you can to have at least one high price point when you present your prices to your customers. That can be on a web page, it can be in a sales proposal document, it can be on a price list. But that high price point serves as a high price anchor, and we remember that, and we use that to judge other things accordingly. And I think as sellers, we underestimate that psychological impact, the perception it creates. Stella Artois, reassuringly expensive. It's that kind of positioning. Here's another great story from the same person. So this is the pricing for the Economist magazine annual subscription in the United States. And then we've got a before and after menu. So the price menu has three options: online only, $59, print only, $125, print and online, $125. And then you can see the take-up rate in the next column. So nobody bought the middle option, and most people, 84%, bought the most expensive product. So as a test, they took out the middle option. They said, well, nobody's buying it, so let's just get rid of it. Nobody wants it, just get rid of the option. So the menu now looks like this. So online only, $59, print and online, $125. Can you guess what happened to the take-up rate? I won't ask you to put any comments in the chat, but just answer that for yourself. What happens to the take-up rate with that new menu pricing structure? Well, if you've guessed correctly, the answer is the take-up rate completely flips around. So now the majority of the people, of the customers, are buying the cheaper option, and the minority are buying the expensive option. So we haven't changed the prices, we haven't put the prices up or down, all we've done is remove an option. And this is what's known as decoy pricing. So the decoy in this example is the middle one, print only, at $125. So a decoy is a price that has the same price or a very similar price to your premium product, but it offers worse value. In this case, it doesn't include online access. Why would you buy it? It just makes no sense. So as a buyer, you're forced to think about the menu A options more carefully, and you quickly conclude, well, out of those last two options, print and online for $125 is clearly the better deal, so I'll take that one, thanks. Whereas in menu B, it's a straight trade-off between the cheap price and the expensive price. So as you'd expect, more people buy the cheap price. So I'm sure you can appreciate that's the kind of structure that the Economist magazine use, and it makes a big difference to their revenues and their bottom line. So we haven't increased the prices themselves, we've changed how we present the prices. And that's a key learning. Thirdly, the third tactic that I want to talk about is what I call tiered pricing. So when we're selling our prices to the customers, I mentioned earlier, one of the mistakes we tend to make is we tend to just present one price, one number to a customer, whether it's a number for a widget or a consultancy service or an IT system. We say that's the price. So from the customer's point of view, they either like it or they don't, right? It's a binary decision. We either like that number or we don't. If we do like it, we might end up negotiating. If we don't, I'm just going somewhere else. So what you can do to increase your chances of success is always present your buyers with 3 options, 3 separately well-spaced out priced options. So I call it premium, standard, entry. You can call it whatever you like. Gold, silver, bronze often gets used, although I don't really like those names because it's very overused. In America, they call it good, better, best. It's the same principle. But the idea is, instead of presenting a buyer with just one price and one option, and when we don't know what their level of willingness to pay is, how do you know where to pitch that price? You just don't. So you can increase your odds of A, getting the sale, and B, getting it at a higher price by having a high-priced premium option, the $2 aspirin price, the standard price in the middle, which is kind of the one you're hoping to sell, and then a lower, cheaper value entry price for those customers that are more price sensitive. And the benefit is, you know, you're covering more of the market in terms of its willingness to pay, especially if you're not sure how much they're willing to pay. And if you do this properly, you can do this at a product level. So if you're selling individual products or a productized service on a web page, you've got three offerings. You can do it at an individual client level. If the way you sell your business is one-to-one selling, and you're selling a solution of some sort, every single option you send to a prospect should include three prices, minimum 2. And give your customer the power of choice when it comes to pricing is really strong. If you just present your customer with one number, they either like it or they don't, and you may or may not have a follow-up conversation with them. If you present them with options, you get to have a conversation with them. Well, you're more likely to get to have a conversation with them about, okay, well, which one of those is interesting for you and why? And then you can have a trade-off with them if you need to. So you see this a lot, particularly with online services, SaaS pricing, zero, all of these kind of things. This is very common. Most businesses do it very well in that space. Some get it wrong. So some put too much content into the entry price, and we don't get the right ratio between the 3 priced options. But if you follow the rules, it will drag your average selling price up because that premium price acts as a price anchor. So just to show you as a simple example, this is an example of a marketing agency. So they've got 3 bundles of design options, design and digital services. So I've changed the prices for confidentiality, but you get the gist, right? So you've got your 2K startup package, a 5K package for existing businesses, and then a full service package at 10K, or whatever the numbers are. And the key here is I want a nice diagonal line from top left to bottom right in terms of the number of features per tier. So as a buyer, at a glance, I can see straight away why each of those tiers is worth the price that's been asked for it. And then if I want to read a bit more about the detail, I can. But you've got to make it as simple and as easy as possible for your buyer. So you can do that as a web page. You can put it in a proposal document. It's a very effective approach. And when you present 3 prices like this to people, which one do you think they're most likely to buy? It's the middle one, right? Well, why is that? It's because for most people, they won't be able to afford the most expensive option, and they don't want the cheapest option. So they take a risk-averse approach and say, I'll pick the middle one because that's probably the one that best meets my needs at a price I'm willing to pay. So we're deliberately designing this kind of structure so that most of the time people buy the middle option. We really don't mind if they pick the cheap or the expensive one. It's entirely their decision. But if you get this right, 60% of the time you'd expect people to pick the middle one. 30% of the time they pick the cheap one, and no more than 10% of the time do they pick the expensive one. So the job of the expensive, the premium tier, its job is not necessarily to be sold. Its job is to influence customer perception about the other two options and drag your average selling price up, because it acts as a center of pricing gravity. It drags that price up. Okay, so 3 examples there from how we can use an understanding psychology. So price anchors, decoy pricing, tiered pricing. They're very powerful, they're very effective, they're not difficult to understand and to apply. So try it out, go back to your business and try these things out and see what difference they make for you. Okay. So just a few thoughts on popular pricing and revenue models at the moment. So I've just mentioned tiered pricing. So if you can get that right, that's very powerful in terms of increasing your average selling price. Freemium versus free trial. I don't know if people understand the difference, but you need to be very clear on this. So freemium is not a pricing strategy. Freemium is a customer acquisition model. It's a way of acquiring a large number of customers who are going to use your free option for as long as they like. So your business model needs to be totally built around that. You can't wake up one day and suddenly decide, we need a freemium option. You've got to build your whole business around that. And the revenue you earn from your paid customers has to cover the cost of all of your customers and generate sufficient margin. But that's completely different to a free trial. A free trial is, well, it's a paid for service, but we're giving you free access for a limited period of time, 30 days or whatever it is. But if you don't pay after 30 days, the trial stops. So it's a very different thing. So just be clear on that. Subscription pricing is, again, very popular, particularly in the digital world, online services, and it makes total sense because consumers increasingly like paying for things on a subscription price. And we're seeing car companies, coming out with subscription plans for their products. So you can do it with tangible products as well as digital products as well. Bundling. Bundling is where you package together features and create a new package. So every product is a bundle of features. Every product is a bundle of features. That's it. A TV is a bundle of the physical TV set and a warranty, a hard feature and a soft feature. That's the bundle that you're buying. So every single product or service that you sell is a bundle of features. So have a think about how you can package up that bundle into propositions that either add more value or support your price position in a stronger way. And then finally, value-based pricing. So this is the nirvana, right, of where most businesses should be wanting to get to. And this is where the ultimate definition of this is where you are pricing every single customer individually based on the value of the outcome they get from using your service. So nothing to do with your cost inputs. But it's hard. That's a lot harder to do properly. But doing any of the things that I've described to you today will take you on a journey towards that place. A few thoughts on the least effective pricing models. So hourly rates. If you're just selling your time on an hourly rate, you're on a hiding to nothing because it's an ultra competitive market. There's always somebody who can do what you do cheaper, right? Whether they're in the UK or they're offshore, there's always somebody. Cost plus margin. So it's important you know your unit costs and the margin differential, but don't just use costs as the basis for all pricing decisions because it doesn't take customer value into account. It doesn't take competitor value into account either. And then finally, competitor-based pricing. I hear many people say, well, I don't know where to set my prices because I can't get any competitor pricing information. Okay, well, look, it is important to understand what your competitors charge, but it's not the be-all and end-all. I think people get too hung up on competitor pricing. Far better to focus on the value of your product or service and price it in line with what you think customers are willing to pay accordingly. Okay, nearly there, last slide or last couple of thoughts. So pulling all of this together into a revenue model. So let's say you've gone through a process with James or the team at Robot Mascot and you're looking for investment. You want to raise funds because you want to grow and so on and so forth. So really important that you put it together in a clearly structured price and volume model. Separate the two things out. Don't just show a revenue curve and a cost curve. Separate out your price and volume. Obviously, you need to understand your unit cost and your margins. And then do scenario planning. You might hear pricing people talking about price elasticity and things like that. But for most startups, SMEs, that's not a concept that's practical. So the simplest alternative to that is scenario planning. Best case, worst case, likely case. So at this price point, what is my best case volume outcome? What is my worst case volume outcome? And what's the likely case? At this price point, what's my best case, worst case, likely case? And at this price point, best case, worst case, likely case. And use that to inform your chosen likely case based on price and volume. And then you can do your projections on that basis. And show your workings as well. If you're talking to investors, show them your best case and your worst case, just to show them that you thought it through. But the most important thing you can do, and this is something that people never, ever do, is what I want you to do in your business plan or your forecasts is to forecast your price increases over the life of your business plan. Most business plans or projections only forecast revenue growth and cost growth. And revenue growth is a function of volume growth, right? But you need to separate revenue growth out into price and volume growth. So in this example, we're saying this business is going to increase its prices by roughly 5% a year, and its volume is going to grow by 10%. So what you find is that the bottom line impacts over the longer term is significant, right? We start out at 150k net profit and we end up with 400k because we're thinking carefully about volume growth and price growth. And what you so, and that feels a bit daunting, right? So, well, how do I know that I can charge £110 in 2 years? Well, you need to work out how you can add more value to your product to justify the price, and it completely changes your mindset. And that's not just an inflationary price increase, by the way. That's a planned, that's an aspirational price, and we're going to work out how we're going to get there. Right, just conscious of time, so very quickly, quick case study. Worked with a client who were experiencing massive increases in demand. Volume shot up by 90%, but because the way their pricing model was structured, their average revenue per case was going backwards. So those two lines couldn't carry on forever. They were going to implode. When we looked at their pricing, they were charging an annual fee in the thousands for this service. What we showed was that they could increase their fees by fourfold, to nearly £10,000. We took their key customers through an engagement process and got them to understand the rationale for it and the reasons why. And what we showed the client was that actually, even at that seemingly high level, from the buyer's point of view, it's still a great deal. So as a result, that change put £500,000 on their bottom line forecast. It's extremely powerful, and that unlocked funds from their parent company for investment in more people, better systems, and scaling them up for future growth. So price is a really powerful lever for justifying your future growth plans. In summary, price is the most important part of your business. Just ask Warren Buffett. Try and spend more time thinking about improving your pricing, because a small change makes a big difference. There's loads of different pricing models I've spoken about. So have a go, try them out, pick one, and try and incorporate an understanding of that pricing psychology into how you present and frame your prices. And then finally, make sure you forecast your planned price positions in your business plan, because it will make a huge difference. Okay, so as I said at the start, if you want to get an assessment on your pricing capability, James is going to pop the link into the chat box now, but I would invite you to click on that link. So it's a pricing power scorecard. So it will give you a free assessment, personalized, tailored report on your business's pricing power. It asks 40 questions across 8 categories, and it takes 5 to 10 minutes to complete. It's self-rated, and then you get a pricing power rating, like Warren Buffett would have you do. Strong, moderate, poor, weak, and it will give you personalized tips and recommendations on what you should do to think about improving your prices. So there we go, folks. I hope you've found this afternoon session helpful. I'll break for questions in a second. Just to say, if you want a copy of the slide deck, get in touch with me. My contact details are on the next slide. Or if you fill in the scorecard, I'll send a copy of the slide deck as well anyway. But if you've got any questions, if you want to have a follow-up call, more than happy. Just let me know. If you're struggling to work out what to do with your pricing and you just want some thoughts, happy to help with that. Or if you're at a more advanced stage and you'd like some help in terms of really fine-tuning that revenue plan, that forecast model, to really make it come alive, if you're going to be talking to investors, then of course I'm very happy to do that as well. Okay, James, I'm gonna stop talking there and just pause for a second. If you could just help me, if there's any.
Absolutely. Fantastic, Mark. Thank you. What an insightful session. Loads of love for you on the chat as well. So we have our question, and when you're going to market with a new product and you're looking at its initial pricing model, you want and you want the pricing to be flexible, so you want to be able to adjust it based on your customers' feedback. How do you go about labeling and communicating that as a sort of beta pricing model? Is there a risk to that, sort of changing them after launch?
Yeah, really good question. I mean, I think if it's a genuine beta phase, I think you can be open about that and saying that we're testing different price points to see, what the optimum price is. If you're just not sure, I would strongly encourage you to use that idea of the 3 tiers, and just use your best judgment to work out 3 price points and 3 packages and present that to the market, and use the feedback you get, whether you're presenting this on a website or on a one-to-one basis. Use the feedback that you get in the short term over the first 3 months to reflect, on why people are either buying your products and services or not. The most important question to ask is why, when you're speaking to clients. Why is that price interesting? Why is that product interesting? Get under the skin of why they make that pricing decision. Another good tactic is to do what I call a price interview. So get in touch with some potential buyers, describe the potential product or service that you're creating, invite them to rate it, tell them how valuable it is, tell them what benefits they'll get as a result, and then invite them just to say, well, what do you think would be an appropriate price for that kind of product or service? And just tease it out. It's just very loose, very informal, but don't be shy of having that price conversation as early as possible in your product development process, because it will tell you an awful lot about the eventual success of the product and customer willingness to pay.
Cool. Thank you. So Jason's asked, and when it comes to the tiered pricing, is it better to have 3 or 4 prices in that tier? He's seen 4 prices recommended by lots of online businesses that have subscription plans. So is there any reason to that, or what are your thoughts?
So my strong advice is to stick with 3 if you can. Okay, 2's okay. 3 is the absolute optimum number, because as soon as you have 4 or more, one of those options from a buyer's point of view is redundant, right? One of them is. We just don't know which one it is. Now, you do see like Salesforce, they have 4 options, right? But let's be clear, Salesforce are a £1 billion company and they've grown on the back of this pricing strategy. They know their stuff inside out. So there are examples out there where providers have 4 options, but if you're starting out on this, I would strongly urge you just to stick to 3, because it forces you to be disciplined about the choice that you're presenting to your market, and the benefit you get from all of the reasons I explained earlier about price signal, choice of 3, picking the middle one, 3 options, making it really easy for the buyer to understand your offering. All of those are optimized when you present 3 options. But if you don't believe me, try out 4 and see how you get on. That's the beauty of pricing, is you can test a lot of things and try different things out.
Awesome, thank you. So we have a question from Gareth. I guess, Gareth, actually, I think I'm going to say contact Mark and have a chat about, because that seems very specific to you. It's about subscription models within the event and ticketing space. So I think that probably is going to be a bit too niche to perhaps discuss. There's going to be 59 board people in the room who that doesn't relate to. So if you want to focus, contact Mark and have a chat with him about that. Okay, yeah, so this is quite a good one. I think this will relate. David has said, how do you manage this when you're working with other kind of professional agencies, buying departments who understand all of this pricing psychology you've just talked about? Are they not just going to see through it and want to negotiate?
It's a really good point. So generally speaking, in larger businesses that have procurement departments, they are far better at buying prices than we are at selling prices. They've been highly trained on procurement and they have all sorts of tactics to drive down price. So they might see through it and they might say, look, well, don't give me this tiered pricing nonsense, just give me a best price. And I get that. But I think you still need to go through that process, because otherwise you're just giving up entirely and playing entirely into their hands. Outside of the procurement community, my view is that most businesses don't generally know about these ideas: tiered pricing, price anchors, price decrease. Generally speaking, they're not that familiar. And secondly, if you do it properly, what you're trying to do is to design price options in a way that your customers will like you. So we're not trying to hoodwink them. We're not trying to mislead them. We're trying to design options that give them a choice at price points they're willing to pay. And when we do this properly, they'll see that and thought, okay, great, that looks like a good set of options. Which one best meets my needs? I mean, you might get the occasional hard-nosed, procurement buyer who's just going to cut through the crap, to be honest, and get straight to the bottom line. But that's a different conversation entirely. That's a negotiation skills conversation rather than a price positioning conversation. So I hope that helps, David.
And Moon and Andrew, I'm going to suggest you do the same thing and contact Mark, because it sounds like your questions are quite specific to you. So Edward, I think Edward's question is probably relevant to a lot of people on this call. How do you even start when you've got no real competitors, you've got no benchmark to start from, you're a completely new concept idea, you're this exciting new startup with a brand new concept, and where do you even start to think about what is the right price?
Okay, yeah, totally get why that seems daunting. If you've got a brand new product, nothing like it exists in the market, there's no competitor references. And let's say it's a digital service, so there's no cost, there's no significant unit cost price. The single most important thing you need to do is to speak to some potential buyers as early as possible and ask them the price question. So in the way that I just outlined a minute ago. So get in touch with people who are potential buyers, describe the concept of the product. You don't have to have a working prototype or anything, you can just describe it. So this is what it does, these are all the benefits, these are the features, and get them to think about it in detail and rate it and tell you what's important. That's the first half of the conversation. Then the second half of the conversation is your testing price points. So what would be an appropriate price, do you think, Mr. Buyer, and why? What would be an expensive price and why? And what would be a cheap price and why? So you're looking for their upper and lower price limits, right? So you don't care at this stage exactly what the price point is. You want the range of prices that they see as being acceptable. Or if they really can't answer that, what other things are similar? So if you've come up with a new online system that saves time, what other similar systems might they compare it to? And are they thinking Salesforce? Are they thinking Xero? So they will have some price reference points that they're thinking of that they might use to judge your product. So you need to know what they are. And if you do 10 interviews like that, I guarantee you'll be in a far better place to price your new product or service properly and do it in line with customer value rather than what your competitors are doing or any other old-fashioned method. So hopefully that helps, but have that price conversation as early as possible in your development process, because it will make a huge difference.
Fantastic. Awesome. Well, we are at time now. It's 4 o'clock. So we are all done here. There's still some questions coming through, but again, Roanna, I think your question is probably best to have a one-to-one with Mark. Fill in the scorecard, follow up with Mark, and maybe he'll be able to help you with that B2B SaaS options and kind of what works best for you. But yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Another great attendance. Mark, you're absolutely fantastic. So much insights there for our audience. So thank you ever so much for doing this. And that's it from now. So in 2 weeks' time, you've got me again talking about investable entrepreneur. And yeah, we'll hopefully see you all then. And thank you very much, Mark. A virtual round of applause for you. And we're off. See you later.
Thanks, James.